On June 11th, 2003, a man by the name of Dawan Ferguson stops at a payphone to call his son's doctor, leaving his son in his running car. Just moments later, Dawan calls 911 to report that his car and his son have been stolen. This would lead to a lot of heartbreak, and it's still technically unsolved today. This is the case of Christian Taylor Ferguson. It was early in the morning, between about 6 a.m. and 6:30 a.m., when Dawan Ferguson says that his son needed medical attention due to a rare metabolic condition known as argininosuscitate synthetase deficiency. So Dawan states that he was on his way to the hospital in his SUV with his son in the back seat. On the way there, he, for whatever reason, decided to stop at a payphone and call his son's doctor first. And he left the car running with the keys in the ignition while he was at the payphone. It's at this point that Dawan claims that somebody came up to the car, got in, and drove away, with his son still in the car. So now Dawan calls 911. He reports that his car is stolen, that his son was inside it, and police begin to search. It was around 8 a.m. that same morning that police found the SUV only about 5 miles away, parked in a cul-de-sac. The keys were still in the ignition, and Christian was just nowhere to be found. Now, before we break down this case any further, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about Christian Taylor Ferguson himself. So Christian suffered from a rare metabolic condition, as I already mentioned, known as argininosuscitate synthetase deficiency. And essentially what this condition did is that it prevented Christian from being able to break down proteins in his digestive system. Typically, proteins are a necessity for sustaining life, but due to his condition, he was not able to break those down properly, and this would lead to buildups of ammonia in his blood, and this is known as hyperammonemia. All of this required Christian to stick to a very strict diet, and he had to take multiple medications multiple times a day, every day of his life. Now, Christian was doing really well until about the age of 7, and this is when he suffered from a severe seizure, which led to a month-long coma. During this time, he also suffered from pretty severe strokes, and this left him quite disabled. He was no longer able to swallow food on his own. He wasn't able to get up and do anything. He couldn't speak anymore, and they had to insert a feeding tube through his stomach in order to make sure that he was able to be fed. Now, due to Christian's condition, he would not have been able to get out of the SUV on his own. So there's absolutely no chance that the SUV and Christian could have been dumped in that cul-de-sac, and that Christian could have gotten out of the car on his own and possibly wandered off. So that's never been a possibility in that case. I just wanted to point that out early on, because I know some people tend to wonder, oh, well, you know, kids get scared, maybe they got up and wandered off, and that's why we can't find them. Who knows? That can't actually be a possibility in this case. Christian was physically unable to get out of that car on his own. So he either had to have been taken out of the car, or he was never in the car in the first place. And this brings us back to his father, Dawan. So if we take a closer look at Dawan's story, it immediately begins to fall apart. At the time of Christian's disappearance, Dawan was a bounty hunter. This required him to have a cell phone. So the question is, why did he need to stop at a payphone to call Christian's doctor? 1, if he was already on the way to the hospital, and 2, if he had a cell phone on him. It seems pretty unnecessary, and it definitely lends a lot to the idea that Christian may have not been in the car to begin with, and I will kind of continue to add to this evidence as we go along here. There is very solid belief that Dawan had something to do with Christian's disappearance, and there's never been really any evidence to any other theories. So that's kind of what I'm presenting you guys with today, because a lot of injustice has happened in this case. It hasn't been looked into properly, and it's very unfortunate for the rest of Christian's family. So let's take a deeper look at what happened. Let's take a deeper look at what happened around this time, and more of the details that kind of lend us to believe that Dawan may have had something to do with his son's disappearance. So there's a local man who walked around this area every single day around the time that Dawan was using the payphone. He actually saw Dawan at the payphone that very morning, and he was able to identify Dawan from a photo lineup at the police station. Now, he said that he did see Dawan using the payphone, that was in fact true. However, there was absolutely no SUV in the area. So either this man walked by at the perfect time to see Dawan still on the payphone and having not realized that his car was taken, which seems extremely unlikely, or it means that he saw Dawan using the payphone as a ruse to lend to the fact that, you know, this story of his could be true. But the SUV was nowhere in the vicinity when this man was walking by, when he saw Dawan using the payphone. Now, in addition to this, the SUV was found only 5 miles away, so if somebody did take it, they didn't go very far at all. In addition to this, they left the keys in the ignition, and they left very valuable electronic devices in the car. Nothing had been taken from the car. The only thing missing was Christian. There was a cell phone in the car, there was a laptop in the car, and there was a camera in the car, and none of these had been touched. The only thing gone was Christian. So it's highly unlikely that somebody is going to take a car for the sole purpose of kidnapping a child in that car. It's extremely unlikely that this would happen with a stranger abduction also. And in addition to this, it's more likely that somebody is going to take a car either to take the car itself or to steal something from inside the car if they're not able to take it from the car, you know, without anybody seeing them wherever the car originally was. It's highly unlikely that somebody would have jumped into this car for the sole purpose of kidnapping a severely disabled boy, and it's highly unlikely that once identifying how disabled this boy was, that they would have actually still attempted to take off with him after having dumped the SUV. Now, of course, you know, we always have to say that there is the possibility. That is true. We weren't there, we didn't see it, we don't have video evidence of what happened, so there is that possibility, but it's extremely unlikely, so I do want to point that out. There was also a report, though it hasn't been completely confirmed, that the SUV was actually seen in that cul-de-sac by people living there at the same time that Dawan was using the payphone. Now remember, we have this report in addition to the eyewitness who saw Dawan using the payphone, and these two times basically line up at about 6 a.m. And so either Dawan got his timing off somehow and it just happened to kind of be off enough, or he could have dropped off the SUV in the cul-de-sac and then he could have gone back to the payphone. So in addition to that, there was also a sighting of a car kind of in the vicinity of the payphone that matches the description of a car belonging to one of Dawan's friends. That same friend lives pretty close to where the SUV was actually dumped, which leads us to the possibility that that friend could have possibly helped Dawan dump the SUV in the cul-de-sac and then drove him to the payphone, so that he could kind of set up his story at that point. Now, I do want to mention that there are reports that Dawan refused to take a polygraph test. I know that a lot of people feel that this does point towards his guilt, and it says a lot to a lot of people, but I do just want to point out that I have done a very lengthy coverage in another video of polygraph testing and basically all of its flaws. I went back into the history and the science of it, and I talked about all of that with you guys. So if you've been watching for a while, you may have seen that. If you haven't seen that, I will leave a little link to it up there in the corner for you guys. But I just want to say that I do firmly believe that Dawan refused to take a polygraph test because he is guilty in this case, but I also don't automatically assume that he's guilty just because he refused to take a polygraph test. So if you guys kind of want to know more of my thoughts on that and why you shouldn't jump to a guilty decision based off of the refusal to take a polygraph test, then you guys should probably go watch that video. Though I do believe that in this particular case, it is most likely that Dawan is guilty, and so most likely he did refuse to take it because he's probably guilty. Unfortunately, we don't know, but let's keep moving on. So Dawan's home had been searched twice by police following Christian's disappearance. Some of the things that they found there include a lot of clothing and bedding that had been stained with urine. Now, if you remember, I did say that Christian had become severely disabled. He wasn't able to move on his own, so he was actually in diapers for quite some time leading up to his disappearance. So you know, it would only be natural that there could be some accidents. He might have accidentally been in a diaper too long and, you know, leaked out, and there were stains because of that. But we know that it went a lot farther than that. And we know that because the police stated that they discovered that Christian's mattress was so completely soaked with urine that it had actually gone all the way through the mattress and dripped onto the floor. Can you imagine leaving a child who can't essentially do anything for himself, who needs your help, leaving him laying in his bed for so incredibly long that he has soaked through his entire mattress and that it's now dripping on the floor? I can't even imagine how somebody can be that cruel, especially to their own child. But there's obvious signs of neglect and abuse in this household. To go along with this, it was also discovered that Christian's feeding tube was in the house, and it looked as though it had bodily fluids still on it, and it looked like there were tool marks around the part that sticks out of the body, suggesting that it could have been forcibly removed from Christian. And this is absolutely disturbing. I honestly don't know how this case hasn't gone anywhere, because there just seems to be so much pointing towards one specific person, and it's so hard to contemplate that this hasn't been solved yet. So I keep getting off track because this case is just so horrific, and I wish so badly that I could help bring justice for this family. So again, let's keep pushing on, because this case it's very hard for me to talk about. This is a hard one. Another thing, or things, I suppose I should say, that were found in the house were multiple completely filled prescription bottles, and I will kind of come back to that in just a minute here. So between the time of 2001 through March of 2003, the state of Missouri actually provided Christian with in-home nursing care. He qualified for this, and so there were nurses in and out of the home a lot of the time, and a lot of these nurses said that they felt that Christian was being definitely severely neglected. They said that the family often refused to change his diaper. They also said that Christian's stepmom wanted absolutely nothing to do with him whatsoever. And in addition to this, they said that it was all the time that Dawan would refuse to go and pick up Christian's medication. He never administered Christian's medication on a proper schedule. He often wouldn't refill the medication. He would just leave full bottles laying around, like I said just a minute ago. But something that is very, very important to think about is that these nurses have told us that they actually went out of their way to go and purchase his medicine out of their own pockets just to make sure that he got it. That is how absolutely arrogant Dawan was. He absolutely refused to go and even fill his sick son's prescriptions that he needed to live, to survive. It's heartbreaking. And so we know from records that the last time that Christian's medication had been filled was 6 weeks before his disappearance. And we also know that that medication was never picked up. And in addition to that, as I said earlier, there were multiple completely filled prescription bottles just laying around the house. They had prescriptions filled, they never picked up. They never bothered to give this child his medication in the way that he needed it, and he suffered greatly because of this. Now, Christian's mother, Theda, and his father, Dawan, had separated in October of 1997. There's a lot of legal battle issues going on with custody, and there is an article down below that I think provides more, but I wasn't really able to confirm that with other sources, so I didn't want to include all of that detail in today's video. So feel free to go look at that article yourself if you're interested. I am not able to speak to how accurate that information is. But what I do want to say is that there was a legal battle for custody. Unfortunately, Dawan won custody, even though Theda had filed multiple complaints against him for neglecting the children. So Theda had most recently filed again for custody in April of 2003, just 2 months before Christian went missing. Now, during this entire time that Dawan had custody of the kids, he often missed scheduled meetings for them to visit with Theta, and this meant that she spent long periods of time not even getting to see her sons. I haven't really mentioned yet, but Christian did have a younger brother, Connor. I will talk about him in just a minute here. Now, this last time that Theta had filed for custody was just a couple of weeks after she had seen her sons, which was just a week after the nursing service had been canceled. Now, the nursing service had been canceled because Dawan refused to enroll Christian in school, so the state refused to continue allowing that service to be granted to Christian for free. Part of the contract was that he needed to be enrolled in school, which Dawan refused to do. So Theta saw the kids 1 week after that nursing service ended, and she said that the children were dirty, they looked unkempt, and it wasn't good. On that same visit, she had to take Christian to the hospital because he was having an episode because he hadn't been given his medicine properly, and this had been going on for so long. So she had to take him to the hospital, and once he was released from the hospital, Dawan picked both of the boys up and he took them home, and unfortunately, this was the last time that Theta saw Christian alive ever again. At one point during this newest custody battle, Dawan was ordered by the court to make sure that he attended all of the scheduled visits with Theta so that she could see the boys. This ruling was given out just a couple of days before Christian went missing. In addition to this was all decided only a few days before Theta's next visit with the boys. So between the time when this decision was made by the court and when Theta was supposed to see the boys next, Christian went missing. Honestly, everything about this case points to the fact that Dawan had something to do with this, that he most likely let Christian die at home because he couldn't be bothered to take care of him, he couldn't be bothered to give him his medicine properly, he couldn't be bothered to love his own son, and this probably led to Christian unfortunately passing away, and then Dawan had to cover it up, and so he got rid of Christian's body somehow, and he came up with this ridiculous story that doesn't seem to really pan out with what other people saw on that day. So as I said, I was going to be coming back around to the topic of Christian's brother Connor. Now, on the day that Christian went missing, Connor actually has a few things to say about that. But it was actually a few days before he went missing that Connor says that Christian had been very, very sick. He was in bed, moaning, and he seemed to be in a lot of pain. And he told his stepmom, Monica, and she told him to not go near Christian again. And at this point, he went to check on Christian again and says that Christian had stopped moaning and that his eyes had rolled back into his head, which is just hard to think about, him having to see that at such a young age and not understanding what was going on. So it was the early morning on the day that Christian disappeared when Connor remembers his dad coming in to their room and wrapping Christian up in blankets and leaving the house. Now, it wasn't only Connor, but also his stepsister who lived in the home, and she said that it was about 4 a.m. that she remembers seeing her father leaving with Christian. So what happened between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m.? What all happened? Because from what I have seen, it doesn't appear that this payphone was 2 hours away from home, and it doesn't make sense. If he left at 4 a.m. with Christian, according to the children, and he didn't even report Christian missing or anything until 6 a.m., what happened during those 2 hours in that early morning? It just doesn't make any sense, and it's just sickening to think about the fact that he probably spent that time hiding Christian's body before coming up with this random story to tell police. Unfortunately, there has been a great injustice done for Christian's family, for his brother, for his mom, who did and do still care about Christian, and it's so sad to see that they haven't seen justice served for Christian, especially when it seems so obvious what had to have happened on that day. This case was supposed to be in the hands of the circuit attorney Jennifer Joyce, and according to Theta's website, lookingforangel.org, which is dedicated to Christian's case and helping bring awareness to other missing loved ones for other families, she has said that this case was given away by Jennifer Joyce to another attorney, Robert McCulloch, I believe, and that person, McCulloch, stated at one point to Theta, according to her, that there was no reason that he should have Christian's case, and he has no idea why he has it. And Theta has stated that this case was has changed hands in an illegal manner. I have not been able to kind of get into that portion of this case, but I did want to kind of present that to you guys. It is on her website. It's something that she is claiming has occurred in this case, and I say claiming because it's not something that I've been able to look further into yet, but I honestly wouldn't have put it past anyone after the fact that this case, nothing happened with it. So like I said, Theta does have her website, lookingforanangel.org. She uses this to continue to search for justice for Christian. She also uses this to kind of further other people's cases, just to kind of, bring attention to them, get people thinking about it, of other missing loved ones. And she has also done walks for missing children. She's tried to bring attention to other people's cases in numerous ways, and she seems like an overall very decent human being. And I can't imagine being in her shoes and having to go through all of this heartbreak and still trying to fight not only for justice for her own son, but for other families as well. You can find the link for her website in the top comments of the comment section down below. That comment will be pinned to the top. It has all my resources like every other video. Her website is one of the sources I used. It is in that comment if you wanted to go check it out. And they do accept donations if you guys are interested in donating to basically the site, to her cause, what she's trying to do for herself and for other families. So I know that this case really focused very, very hard on one particular suspect, and that is not typical for the videos that I do, but I did just want to say that there isn't any other suspect in this case. There's no evidence pointing to anyone else. There's no actual solid evidence that Dawan's SUV was actually stolen at any point. And unfortunately, it does seem that Dawan is the only possible suspect in this case. Like I did say earlier, there is, of course, always the possibility that something else could have happened. But we don't have any evidence of that. And I feel that there is a lot of neglect and abuse in that household. And I feel that Christian probably succumbed to that. And Dawan had to come up with a story to cover his tracks. So thankfully, Connor eventually went back into the custody of his mother, Theta, and so that's great, but I wish for Theta, for her family, that she could have gotten custody of both of the boys before something this tragic had to happen. She could have hopefully, turned Christian's life back around for him, and she never even got the chance. So I wanted to bring this case to you guys today because it really touched my heart reading it. I can't imagine being in her shoes. I can't imagine what that feels like. And I feel like, that family deserves a lot better. I feel that justice deserves to be served in this case, and I feel that nothing has really been done. So now that we've come to the end of this case, though, I would just like to ask you guys to please remember to remain respectful in the comments down below. If you guys have other theories, please feel free to share those with me. Case suggestions, questions, anything you guys have in the comments down below is great. I love hearing from you guys, and I'm so excited to see that there are so many new people here all of a sudden. It's been wonderful. So welcome to everyone who's new, and if you guys haven't already, you can check out my social media. I have left my usernames, handles, whatever you guys call them these days, in the description box down below. So if you follow me on Twitter especially, that's where I update you guys if a case isn't going to be going up on the regular schedule for whatever reason, which has been a lot lately. My apologies. I think I have solved all the problems. Hopefully it won't happen again. So along with that, if you guys appreciated today's video, if you liked it, if you want to see more, make sure you guys consider clicking the subscribe button down below if you haven't already, so you guys can continue to see my content here on YouTube, and you guys can continue to help me bring awareness to these cases. And if you guys want, please think about sharing this video with your friends, your family, complete strangers, anyone. Let's try to get this video out there, because I feel that there has to be someone out there who knows something about this case, and I think that maybe if they can see that people still care, people who have, no really idea of who Christian was, never met him, you know, never met his family, if they realize that people out there who don't even know him still care, they still want to find answers, maybe they'll think about coming forward even after all these years. So consider sharing this video, trying to help me get cases like this out there more. It helps. It may seem like it doesn't help, but it should. And of course, if you guys have any information on this case, I urge you to call the number that's on the screen right now and give them your information. Even if you don't think it's important, it could be, and you may just not know it. So if you guys do have any information related to this case, please call that number, and I will see you all again on Friday for another new video. Bye, everyone.